The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. Bringing you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports. You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
It has been a very interesting college football season, to say the least. And now, as we shift gears here, Notre Dame is heading into the home stretch of the season right now. They're one of the most stable teams in the country, but as we've seen in college football, things can change in a hurry. But coming off the bye week, we've seen in the past how Notre Dame has made some drastic improvements. I mean, last year they had the Louisville game, which was a nice win, but it was still just very discombobulated. They go into the bye, and then coming out of that, their offense had an entirely new identity. They smoked Stanford 49-7, and yeah, Stanford wasn't a very good team, but the offense had their most efficient performance of the entire season. So where do you expect to see the biggest improvement this year for Notre Dame coming off their second bye week?
I think we'll start to see more of the consistency on offense we saw against Arkansas and Purdue in terms of putting up points and putting up touchdowns. Part of the reason I think that's dipped in recent weeks is I do think there were some nerves against USC, particularly from CJ Carr, and they missed some opportunities that they shouldn't have. Of course, they missed a field goal too that was just atrocious. But another reason I think this is the level of competition is going to be quite poor this second half of the season. And I just think Notre Dame should really have a field day offensively. Defensively, I think they're going to finally have a little bit more luck bringing the quarterback down for sacks, because I feel like lately the pressure has really improved, but they don't really have that many sacks. Like they might have had a couple, like 3-4 the last game, but there's just so many games where I feel like the quarterback is in the grasp and like they're either just getting the ball away, somehow grounding's not getting called, or they're just getting away. And then maybe, just maybe, an opposing kicker will miss a field goal, because I'm pretty sure opponents have only missed one field goal all year against Notre Dame, and that was the end of the first half from A&M.
I'm glad you brought that up, because opponents have just been nails kicking against Notre Dame. And usually it's the other way around. I feel like historically Notre Dame has had pretty good luck with opposing field goal kickers, but I agree with you on all accounts. I figure they're going to figure out the red zone issues and the short yardage issues, because, look, they were one of the best red zone teams in the country at the start of the year. Right. So we know that they're capable. They just have to fix some of the issues with play calling and scheme. I'm not worried about CJ Carr. I feel like it's not being talked about how poor those conditions were in that game. And even at the start, like, it had not been raining for like 30 minutes, but the field was still very wet. It was windy. And then the second half, it was borderline impossible. So I'm going to cut him some slack for his performance overall, not necessarily his interception. That was terrible. And then on defense, not just getting the quarterback down, I think we're going to see the pressure ramp up even more. I expect to see Bryce Young play better. He has been playing better in recent weeks, not to the extent that I thought he would going into this season. The defensive tackles have been better, and they've been using the linebackers a lot more effectively. I mean, that USC game was the best game the linebackers have played all year. Jalen Sneed was in the backfield whenever he was out there on the field, and Boubacar Traore is ascending in a way that he might have to make a difficult decision about whether or not he wants to go to the NFL after this year. So if they clean those two things up, realistically, they should be able to cruise the rest of the way.
I agree, and I think they will be able to. I was saying this, was it after Arkansas? I don't remember what game it was. I compared this to like the 2021 season, where the second half of the season, you just see a lot of bad backup quarterbacks potentially, and just teams that aren't very good. And that's sort of what I'm seeing. And I think in addition to just gaining more chemistry, a redshirt freshman quarterback getting more starts under his belt, more experience, and a defensive coordinator getting more comfortable with his personnel, they're just vastly superiorly talented to all these teams on the schedule. And I think you'll see that to start play out in the production.
2021 is a great example, too, because that team radically changed after the bye week. They couldn't figure out anything on the offensive line. They squeak by Virginia Tech, then they have a bye. They beat USC pretty decisively, 31-16. They get in that shootout against North Carolina, 44-34. And then after that, they smoked Navy, Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Stanford to close out the year. And I could see either Navy or Pitt one of those two games just being a little tricky for Notre Dame, not in the sense that they'd lose it. They should probably win both of those games by double digits, but both of those offenses can put up a lot of points. And I do have some concerns about Chris Ash going up against Navy for the first time. I mean, Al Golden even gave up over 30 points in his first game against Navy. Fortunately, Chris Ash has a bunch of assistants who have played Navy before. They kind of know how to game plan it. Marcus Freeman even admitted they prepped for Navy during the bye week. But that game, I mean, you and I have talked about the Navy game quite a bit. It's not our favorite game, to say the least. And considering Notre Dame plays Pitt right after Navy, I don't know. I could just see one of those games being a little bit tricky, much like that North Carolina game was back in 2021.
Yeah, I don't feel that way about those two games. We know what happens when Notre Dame plays a good Navy team, and let's also be careful because Navy could definitely lose to North Texas this week. I think North Texas is pretty good. They got that stud freshman quarterback. Navy's kind of escaped the last few weeks too in weird fashion, but what happens when Notre Dame plays a good Navy team? They win by 1,000. And it seems that Marcus Freeman kind of has a personal vendetta against Pat Narduzzi too. If you go back to that 2023 game, I mean, they just beat the absolute brakes off them. And then he puts Kenny Minchie in to take the knee just to twist the knife a little bit more. The only scary thing about that game is the turf at the location formerly known as Heinz Field, because that just is not, that's not safe.
The NFLPA is literally investigating the grounds.
Yeah.
Because it's a safety hazard.
Yeah. Maybe move that game to the Link. I don't know. Move it to Philly. I'm fine with that.
Play at a high school.
Play it at Duquesne. Yeah.
I don't even care, but I did hear that, and that does make me a little bit nervous as well. But I hope that Marcus Freeman has a vendetta out there against Pat Narduzzi. Again, he would never say it publicly, but Pat Narduzzi has had no problems making his feelings about Notre Dame known publicly, and I'm sure that has made its way into the Notre Dame locker room. But
indeed,
again, outside of that, I mean, the schedule is really easy. Boston College is 1-7. Stanford is no good, although they put up a little bit of a fight against Miami in the first half. But I'm hoping that Navy does not lose to North Texas, because I have a good feeling that they would be ranked if they do win that game. And I think Pittsburgh might actually sneak into the rankings as well.
Totally. No, definitely. And that would be fantastic. Obviously, it would also be just kind of hilarious, because I'm thinking back to when I was on this program a few weeks ago. We were talking after USC lost to Illinois, and Bud Elliott's talking about how Notre Dame's screwed. They don't have any ranked wins on the schedule. And, since then, it's looking like they have the potential to have 3 ranked wins on the schedule. And also since then, Florida State has not won a game. So that is just funny how that stuff works out.
So do you have any concerns left going into this stretch run?
The only thing that I'm concerned about are injuries, truthfully. Notre Dame's already a pretty banged up team. They can't afford any further, especially on the offensive line. And I think just like with anything, right? You can have a bad game and throw a bunch of picks, but I don't know why. I've honestly kind of felt this way since probably the Boise game, especially just seeing the defense and how they changed. It was like they figured it out. And that was not something that I really expected after the Purdue game, but it was kind of a drastic change, honestly. And they've looked pretty nails since then. And I think they have enough on both sides of the ball where they can play a C game and still win by 20 points against a lot of these teams. So I'm hoping they're not going to play a C game. And I think this is going to be extremely enjoyable to watch too, because they are a fun offense to watch, especially. And this might be the last we get to see Jeremiah Love and maybe Jadarian Price in Notre Dame uniforms. So you can't take that for granted. But I don't have a ton of concerns outside of the uncontrollable stuff.
I agree on the injury front, particularly on the offensive line. I think they are one injury away from being in a pretty dire situation, because Sullivan Absher was always going to be like the first guy off the bench, right? And the first injury that happens is at center, and they go with Joe Otting, who had an awesome game against USC. Is he going to be able to sustain that now that there's film on him? We'll see, but that's very encouraging. But now you have Sullivan Absher starting in place of Billy Schrouth, and now the next question is like, okay, if anyone else goes down, who do you go to? Because a lot of people have been talking about playing Will Black, the freshman, former 5-star. Well, he's been dealing with a concussion. I don't even know how much he's been practicing the past couple of weeks. So he's not healthy either. And I just feel like, especially after what we saw from Silas Prescott in that game against Miami, that worries me a little bit because if they're able to hold on with this group, make it to the end of the regular season, it looks like they'll get Billy Stroud at some point. But other than that, they cannot afford one more injury on that offensive line, which has been a pretty cursed group this past year and a half.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously we saw the Ashton Craig thing and the Billy Stroud thing happen live in games. There's the Jag you saw incident from the summer, but I'm a little confused how so many of these injuries seemingly happen in practice. And like, also, how did Matty Augustine and Will Black get concussed in practice? They bump heads in the locker room. Like, I'm just confused how that even happens. And this is a Freeman thing. There's a lot of practice injuries, and I know it's football; it's a violent game, but and I know they're being very physical in a lot of these practices, but they need to find a way to channel that a little bit better, I think.
It is sort of the downside of having really physical practices, which is something that Marcus Freeman is known for. Because you look at the injury report here, Will Black, practice injury. Micah Gilbert was in a game. Jane Greathouse suffered his injury in practice. He's been listed as questionable for like 5 straight weeks. Logan Thomas, I believe. Matt Jeffrey was a practice injury. Augustine, defensive end Jordan Botello is now listed as questionable with a concussion. I don't really know there. That could have been during the USC game, and we just didn't know. And then Gabe Rubio had his injury in practice as well. So, look, you want to have a physical team. You want to have a physical program. But you're right. It is becoming a little bit of a trend. And I don't think Notre Dame is in a position right now where they're in a desperate situation at any other position outside of the O-line, but obviously you'd like for some of these injuries to be cleaned up. But I just want to see Greathouse on the field again, just so we can put some of that speculation to rest, because until he goes out there and plays a couple snaps, people and fans are going to continue to wonder on message boards, on social media, like, is Jane Greathouse going to redshirt? Like, what is the deal there? I expect him to play this weekend, but hopefully that gets resolved here soon.
Yeah, you would think he has to. It's pretty strange. I don't think he's transferring, because if he was, I think he'd be not on the sidelines, but it's definitely a strange one.
Yep. All right. Well, with that, we'll call it a day. Next time, who knows what's going to happen in college football, Luke, but we will have you back here next Tuesday to react to the win. Oh, might have just jinxed it against Boston College, but we'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
The injury status for Tommy Castellanos.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles.
Tommy Castellanos, according to Mike Norvell, would not have played if there was a game this past weekend. He took that ugly hit, in my opinion, a dirty hit against Stanford. And he's been banged up since the game against Pittsburgh on that drive. I think it was the second drive of the game, right down by the goal. I took a big hit. So he's banged up. He's improving, but here's the question. Should he or should he not play? Because you got 4 games after you play Wake Forest. Anytime there's a head injury, it's a little iffy to begin with. But even without that, if Tommy's not really healthy and he's not able to run, can he operate Gus's offense any place near peak efficiency? I say no. I would hold him out. That is my take. He needs to be able to run on any play, full go. It's the danger with Gus Malzahn's offense, and I said it in the first time he came up to the podium last winter, all the way through. At some point, Tommy's probably going to miss a game. That's the nature of this offense. Well, that time has come to fruition. And if Florida State can't beat Wake Forest without Tommy, you know what? It just doesn't matter. You got to look out for the young man's health first and foremost anyway, coming off a head injury. it would probably, in my opinion, be best to rest him just on that. But in addition to that problem, again, his leg's not the same. You can tell when he runs, he gives it all he has. Don't get me wrong. Tommy plays hard. But is Tommy Castellanos really and truly going to be that efficient against Wake or any other team unless he can take off, escape the rush, and throw or just go run? He's one of the most dynamic players in college football, but that's when he's healthy. I would personally sit him down and let the young guy, Kevin Sperry, go get some reps. Not going to talk about Sperry's stats because they're so minuscule. I looked at him a minute ago. It's not really that important, but there is something else that is important. How does the rest of the team take this? As I noted at the opening, does Florida State really respect Wake Forest? Probably not. We can sit here and say, well, why would they not take them serious? You guys aren't very good. That's not how players look at things. They look at the helmets. And I know that's ridiculous, but I'm telling you, this is not just a Florida State issue. This is a college football issue. And when you do that, you could struggle. However, in reverse, they may look at it like, hey, we got a freshman going out there to play quarterback. Kevin Sperry's a good player, but inexperienced. We got to be on our P's and Q's. I'm curious if this, in some ways, reverse psychology could get the players going, because nobody wants to lose to Wake Forest at home. They don't. I think it might actually motivate the Noles. And again, to run Gus Malzahn's offense at peak efficiency, you need a guy that can really run. That is not a problem with Kevin. He is a really good athlete. He's physical. He's not afraid of contact, and he's got a good arm. I think that's pretty apparent based on how he performed against Stanford. Is it going to be perfect if he's the quarterback? No, it's not. They'll probably have to scale it back in some capacity. But remember, having last week, not playing on Saturday, and then going through this week again, he's going to get some of the reps. He's going to be a lot more comfortable. Chroma and all those guys, they got a week off from getting hit too. I would think, for the love of mankind, if you can't run the football a little bit more traditionally against Wake Forest with Kevin Sperry in the lineup, again, this is just my opinion, it's my take, I would sit Tommy and let Kevin go get his time in, if you will. If you can't beat Wake Forest with Kevin Sperry, then you know what? You're just done. You're just done. This season is completely in the dumpster. So I'm not trying to pick on Wake, but they're not that good. I'll get to their quarterback in their situation in just a little bit. They've got some talented individual players, but defensively, they do not match up with the Noles. I'll break down their defense on Wednesday, Thursday, and then have my final score prediction on Friday, especially as we learn more with injuries this week. But they don't. I think Kevin could throw for $180, 1 touchdown, maybe has 1 pick, and Florida State should still win by 10 points. I do. I'm going to tell you right now, barring something unforeseen, like Kevin gets hurt this week at practice too, I'm picking Florida State to win on Friday. I do not have faith in a young quarterback trying to go play at Doak. Even though Florida State's not completely dialed in, I think the reverse psychology of a freshman quarterback being out there, they're probably going to want to play for him. And on top of that, it's Wake Forest. There are going to be a few plays where FSU speed, especially Danzy, are they really going to be able to match up with that? Nobody else can. Why would we believe that Wake Forest is? They're probably going to play cover 2, cover 3, something basic. They're going to run the ball. It's going to be 2nd and 5 all day. I think Sperry will be okay. They might even score in the 30s with him. And by the way, Wake Forest's defense is solid. They held, I was surprised by this. To their credit, they held SMU to 12 points last week and won 13-12. That actually helps Florida State. Nobody outside of the people in Winston-Salem, in that locker room, that coaching staff room, thought they were going to beat SMU, and they did. So that also helps the Noles. So again, my take, I would sit Tommy Castellanos. I would play Kevin Sperry. And if Florida State can't beat Wake Forest on their home field with him, who cares? Who cares? I can go ahead and say this too. Evaluation over. Mike, leave. I know they're not going to do that, but that's got to be the evaluation. There is no excuse to lose to Wake Forest this weekend. None. Zero, zip, none, nada. They hit the home run by getting Kevin Sperry to come here because he is a fit for Gus's offense. And he's a kid that's dialed in. You could tell he takes his preparation serious because when they inserted him into the game against Stanford, he didn't look like as the saying goes, a deer in headlights. He was pretty good. That's a good football player. Florida State has a chance with him behind center to be a pretty decent team. I'll be curious to see how he interacts with the team this week or what we hear. Maybe Tommy has a miraculous comeback and he can play. But again, I would sit him. That's just my take. We'll talk a little bit more about this going into the second segment, but it's really more about Wake Forest. I've got a pretty strong take on that too. Defense, it's your time. If you guys don't bow up against Wake Forest, what are y'all doing?
The NFL season is rolling along, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for this weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
We all agree changes need to be made. Quarterback, play calling.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers.
Auburn's a huge favorite on Saturday. I don't disagree with it, but given a lot of points in Vegas for a team that doesn't score too often, we'll touch on that in a moment. But we all agree changes are needed for this Auburn offense. And it's not just one thing, but one thing could change other things for Hugh Freeze. I know Hugh Freeze answered a question on Monday about how the offense doesn't change if Ashton is in for Jackson. Based on the play calling we saw in the second half, I'm not entirely sure that I buy that.
I don't buy it at all. I think that I think it's a totally different skill set that Ashton offers compared to Jackson. As I said, if you're comparing them running wise, Jackson seems like more of a power guy, whereas Ashton seemed more of like an elusive guy that still fell forward. Okay. And then just because Jackson, he's not going to outrun anybody. And so there were a couple of times where he comes squared up with somebody, he falls forward, but he'll try to go through somebody, which was always kind of interesting to me that he didn't have more turnovers like fumbles doing something like that. Whereas Ashton, he was kind of elusive this past Saturday. It seemed like whenever he got to the outside or went up the middle, like guys were having a tough time putting a hand on him, which is kind of I guess I just had not seen enough tape on him to know that he had that in him. I knew
he's a good runner. He's a good runner for sure. Yeah. I've said the opposite. Like I trust Ashton much more like in between the tackles. I think the 2-point conversion score is a prime example where he was able to fall forward. Like I'm not confident that Jackson does score in that situation.
Oh, I don't think he's been effective doing it. I just think that that's how Jackson tries to run instead of because I also think Ashton's faster. I don't know. I haven't seen the clock on him, but he seems to be a little bit faster than Jackson is. But also just Zach decision making. I mean, I don't think people realize, and I talked about the domino effect of being back in the pocket and taking a loss or taking a sack or taking 4 yards back or taking 6 yards back. What that does when it gets time for you to punt the football, Cox having to punt it 6 yards deeper than what he normally would, whereas Ashton seems like he's going to stay, even if he took a loss, it would be right around that line of scrimmage. So, and changes, the spark was there, but I think that spark could stay there. And nothing against Jackson Arnold, but I hope that's the last snap that I've seen him take as an Auburn Tiger, barring injury, because from a personnel standpoint, honestly, if they trot him out there this weekend against Kentucky, I think the crowd turns on it, and I don't want that for him. I think that you get
I don't either. And is it going to happen when he runs on the field? Kyle and I talked about that this morning. Like, is it going to happen when he runs onto the field? No. Kyle mentioned like maybe he gets a negative reaction during like the lineup announcements, the video that they play. And I don't even know if it's that, but the first time they have to punt with him out there, I don't want him to go through that. No. I just don't.
No, because it's just he hasn't been defiant. He's done all the good things that he should do. He said all the things that he should say. He's not been a quarterback that you're like, man, I don't like this guy. Like you like Jackson Arnold. He just you mentioned it in one of the pods about him being late. He is. He's 2 steps late on everything, and it was so evident this past Saturday because the pick 6 that he gave up, that ball should have been out way ahead of time before that. And then Ashton throws the same ball when he's in, and it's completed. And it's because he made the throw before the break. The receiver makes the break, and the ball's on him within a couple of seconds, a couple of tenths of a second. So,
and it's not just the pick 6, right? There's a few people pointing back that like it should have just been a handoff, which I agree. But to say that throw was on time, I think is a little silly. And it's not just us saying that; it's players and coaches. But the difference is it's not just that play. It's like every play. There's an outbreaking route to Perry that like Perry could have caught it. It would have been a really, really tough grab. And it's just like, just get it out quicker. Just get it out quicker. It's not just the pick. It's all of it. And it's been every week, and it's been a concern over and over and over again. And so does Ashton help with that? If the answer to that is yes, great. But like, let's also, these coaches know more about these quarterbacks than we could ever imagine. Like there's a reason that it took this long for them to pull Jackson.
Yeah.
Is that because, Freeze sees the upside of Jackson Arnold, which is why he went out in the portal to go get him? Is it a, man, I don't want to be wrong type thing? Is it just, hey, Ashton hasn't been here that long and they really do want, the red shirt narrative is true that they want to preserve his red shirt? Is it a combination of all of those things? Like there's a reason why it took so long for them to pull Jackson. And so are there parts of Ashton's game that we're not aware of in the negative sense? Or else, like, if it was clear that Ashton was better than Jackson, Ashton would have started. So I do want to kind of tell Auburn fans, like, there's usually a reason why the backup quarterback's not playing more. And so let's just, let's have realistic expectations here.
And my realistic expectation is be a good game manager. Don't take big losses. Get rid of the football. Get rid of the football on time. Going back to what you said, we were talking about, everybody talks about the out routes. I said the same thing on the deep routes. He's waiting until the guy gets open before he throws it, whereas you're supposed to throw that ball when he's going to beat his guy. Like, go ahead and put it up in the air and let him get up under it. And
throw it to a spot.
Yeah. And Jackson, it wasn't doing that. He's waiting until Cam gets just past the guy and throwing it. Well, then that DB's got a chance to catch up after that. So, little things like that. And I think going back to what you just said, I think it's a combination of all of them. Although I will say this is just based on history over the last 2 years and what I've seen this year. Mm-hmm. I think some of it is stubbornness with you. And I think that he just has the wherewithal to look himself in the mirror and go, look, trust the process. This is going to happen, instead of making that change. And it just hasn't happened. And now that you've given fans and people like us doing a pod or doing a show to break it down and look at it and go, because we all know that the best quarterback in the room is the second quarterback, the reserve guy. And that usually does not pan out well. Yeah. But if he continues, Ashton does what he did this past Saturday, which is just limit mistakes, limit losses, hand the ball off to a pretty dadgum good running back tandem, in my opinion, with Cobb and with Mapson, which I would like to see Mapson get more touches this Saturday than what he saw this past Saturday. Clearly, he's proven he can do it even as a freshman. But make some changes. You got an opportunity to finish strong, become bowl eligible, beat Kentucky, upset Vandy, beat Mercer, and give Alabama a run for their money under the lights at Jordan-Hare at the end of the season. Like,
you're 7-5. It's not the season we thought, but like you didn't give up.
Yeah.
And is that messaging you can send to, the locker room to keep guys and, hopefully you can maintain a good chunk of the roster. And, you can tell the recruits like, look, I'm not going anywhere, but we are bringing in an offensive coordinator so I can focus more on the player aspect of it. And then, go out and give Auburn fans a good opportunity to, take a quick weekend outing in December to, hopefully somewhere other than the Birmingham Bowl. I think if they get to 7-5, they wouldn't go there, but you've got to beat a good team. You've got to beat a really good team in Vanderbilt or Alabama to do that. So we'll see. We'll see if those proper changes are made and then if they're executed, which is another part of this for sure. But Auburn's a huge favorite.